Welcome to the debate, the worthiness trap, how to build unshakable self-esteem after betrayal. Today we analyze the ideas from the book, The Unfolding Heart, Navigating Love, Betrayal, and Unstoppable Self-Worth.
And we are diving into some heavy machinery today. This isn't just about getting over a breakup, or eating a pint of ice cream while listening to sad songs. We're looking at a methodology that essentially claims modern romance is a fairy tale illusion that's basically designed to shatter us. The core idea here is that the only way to survive the inevitable silent sting of betrayal is to undergo this rigorous, almost clinical reconstruction of the self.
Clinical might be a strong word, but I'd argue that precision is exactly what's missing from how we handle our emotional lives. The central argument we're looking at is that we're set up for devastation because we treat love as this wild forest that thrives on magic rather than a garden that requires conscious navigation. And when we ignore the mechanics of how we connect, specifically through things like attachment theory and cognitive restructuring, we aren't just being romantic, we're being reckless.
See, that's where I start to get a little twitchy. I agree that walking blindly into traffic is bad, sure, but the material we're discussing proposes a level of hypervigilance that feels less like a garden and more like a fortress. I mean, we're talking disengagement roadmaps, implementation roadmaps, trauma bonding protocols. My question, and what I really want to press on today, is whether this rigorous safety-first approach actually builds self-worth, or if it just builds walls so high that nobody can ever climb them.
I think that's a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of what safety means in this context. We're not talking about hiding, we're talking about surviving the silent sting of betrayal. Most people, they look for the big explosion, the affair, the public scandal. But the philosophy here argues that the real damage, it comes from the micro-betrayals, the gaslighting, the intellectual theft, the gradual erosion of your autonomy. If you don't have a structured way to identify those things early, you don't just lose a relationship, you lose your mind.
Okay, fair enough.
The diagnosis of the problem, the insidious nature of gaslighting and the erosion of self, that part is compelling. I'm with you. But the cure? That is what we really need to debate. Because if the cure for heartbreak is to turn your entire life into a risk management exercise, I am just not sure that's a life worth living.
All right, let's stand our ground then. My position is that the methods proposed, specifically using cognitive restructuring and the disengagement roadmap, are essential survival tools in a modern dating landscape that is, let's be honest, often predatory. We have to stop viewing love as some passive event that just happens to us and start seeing it as a dynamic landscape we have to navigate with a map.
And I'll take the skeptical view. While I appreciate the clarity of it all, I believe the unstoppable self described here risks becoming the unguarded self. I'd argue that the relentless focus on vetting and red flags, it just inoculates us against the very vulnerability that's required for real intimacy. You can't spreadsheet your way out of the human condition.
Then let's look at the first pillar of that human condition that this methodology tries to dismantle, the fairy tale narrative. The argument here is that the cultural script we're all fed, that love conquers all, that soulmates are destined, is not just wrong, it's a pathology.
Pathology? That's doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Are you telling me that believing in the one is some kind of disease?
In a way, yes, it is, because it blinds you to the data. Just look at the evidence provided about early attachment styles. The framework breaks this down very, very clearly. We're told our childhood experiences forge a blueprint: secure, anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, or fearful avoidant. And the argument is, if you are, say, anxious preoccupied, someone who needs constant reassurance to feel safe, you are almost chemically drawn to the dismissive avoidant, someone who views intimacy as a loss of independence.
Right. So the classic runner and chaser dynamic. We've seen it in every single romantic comedy ever made.
Exactly. But the fairy tale tells us that the anxiety you feel, that stomach-dropping sensation when they don't text back, the obsessive checking of the phone, it tells you that's passion. It says that friction means it matters. This philosophy argues no, that's actually a triggered nervous system. It creates a cycle of pursuit and withdrawal. If you don't identify that, if you don't label it immediately, you aren't falling in love, you're stepping straight into a trap.
Okay, I don't dispute the validity of attachment theory itself. It's well-established science.
My concern is the application. The material suggests we should be using this as a first line of defense. It practically encourages us to sit across from a date and mentally fill out a diagnostic chart? Oh, he values his independence a little too much. Dismissive avoidant. Next, if we view every potential partner through that clinical a framework, don't we just destroy the mystery? I mean, friction in a relationship isn't always a pathology. Sometimes it's just two human beings figuring things out.
But what you call mystery, this framework identifies as ignoring incompatibilities. There's a specific tool mentioned, the relationship expectations and reality check. It challenges beliefs like, my partner should know what I need without me saying it. That isn't mystery. That is a myth. The proposal here is that believing in mind reading, or that, jealousy is a sign of love, that gets a high score on the illusion scale. This isn't about killing the vibe. It's about killing the delusion that immaturity is romantic.
I agree that expecting mind reading is immature, of course. But the leap from don't expect mind reading to analyze their attachment style to predict their capacity for intimacy, that's a huge leap. It feels like we're trying to engineer a guarantee of safety before we invest a single emotion. The material talks about a reality check, but isn't there a reality where you fall for someone who's a bit avoidant and you actually, work through it? Or does this framework demand that we only bet on sure things?
It demands we bet on secure things, or at least that we understand the odds. If you ignore that a partner is dismissive avoidant, you are signing up for a dynamic where you feel stifled and they feel suffocated. The central thesis is that love is not a fixed state but a dynamic landscape. You can't navigate a landscape if you refuse to look at the map because you prefer the magic of getting lost.
Well, sometimes being lost is part of the adventure. But let's pivot to what happens when that adventure goes wrong. The concept of the silent sting. This is where I think the argument makes its strongest case, even if I disagree with the solution.
This is crucial. We often define betrayal way too narrowly, and the material expands that definition significantly. It's not just cheating. It discusses intellectual betrayal, financial secrecy, and gaslighting. There's a specific case study mentioned, Maya and Liam.
Right, the business partners. Yeah.
Partners in life and in business. So Maya shares a business idea with her partner Liam. He's excited, he's supportive. Weeks later, he launches a nearly identical project but under his own name. And when she confronts him, he doesn't apologize. He gaslights her. He says, "It's a common idea, Maya. You're overreacting. You always make everything about you."
Okay, that's a clear-cut example of a jerk. No one is defending Liam in that situation. That is theft and manipulation, plain and simple.
But notice her reaction. Maya experiences cognitive dissonance, and this is a key technical term we need to unpack. It's that mental stress you experience when you're holding two or more contradictory beliefs. So Maya believes, Liam loves me, and Liam stole from me. And those two facts just cannot coexist peacefully. To resolve the stress, the brain often rejects the painful truth. She starts to doubt her own reality because the betrayal didn't fit the standard model of, say, he slept with my sister. The argument here is that we need to validate these silent stings. If a partner consistently dismisses your feelings or creates hidden debts, those are chips in the scaffolding of trust.
I'm totally on board with the Maya and Liam example. That is severe. But the methodology goes further. It suggests that even broken promises or forgetting can be classified under this umbrella if they're persistent. My worry is, what's the threshold? If my partner promises to do the dishes and forgets 3 times in a row, am I supposed to view this as a systematic dismantling of the scaffolding of trust?
If it's chronic, yes, because it signals a lack of respect.
Or it signals they have ADHD, or they're just tired. This is the police state concern I have. If we're so hyper-vigilant for micro-betrayals, we might start interpreting normal human fallibility as malice. The text warns against the mind rationalizing hurt, which is valid, but it seems to leave very little room for the mind to just forgive an error.
Forgiveness is fine for mistakes, but we have to differentiate between mistakes and patterns. The concept here is trauma bonding, where we actually get addicted to the cycle of abuse and intermittent reinforcement. The danger isn't the dishes. The danger is the rationalization. Oh, he didn't mean it. He's just stressed. The mind rationalizes the hurt to avoid the pain of the truth. And that is what leads to the big crash. You don't get to the big crash without ignoring all the small stings.
That brings us to the exit strategy. Because if you do decide that the dishes or, the gaslighting are too much, the proposal is a very, very specific way out. The disengagement roadmap.
Which is just brilliant in its pragmatism. It directly addresses the sunk cost fallacy, the idea that we stay because we've invested years, emotions, shared dreams. The argument is that this is a chain of stasis. We cling to a failing venture simply to avoid the pain of loss.
Venture, investment, sunk cost. We're talking about human hearts like they're a failing cryptocurrency. I mean, it feels incredibly cold.
Because the brain handles them in a similar way. The philosophy points out that the agony of breaking up is biological. It literally mimics drug withdrawal. The neurobiology of attachment means that when you leave even a toxic person, your body screams in pain. Your cortisol spikes, your dopamine crashes. The disengagement roadmap, assess, build resources, no contact, it's designed to override that biological glitch. You cannot rely on your feelings to leave because your feelings are chemically rigged against you.
I understand the science of the withdrawal, I do. But the disengagement roadmap feels incredibly rigid. Step 1, assess and plan. Step 2, build resources. Step 3, communicate. It reads like a corporate restructuring plan. I'm sorry, Todd, but due to a deficit in emotional returns, we are downsizing our relationship effective immediately.
If Todd is gaslighting you, then yes, downsize him immediately.
But is it realistic? I mean, when someone is in the throes of that biological withdrawal, can they really just follow a 5-step plan? The skeptic in me says that people are messy. We break up, we hook up again, we cry, we fail. This method suggests that if you have enough support ecosystems and mentors, you can bypass all the mess. I just think that bypass might actually prevent the necessary grieving process.
I disagree. The mess you're describing is often just a prolonged trauma response. The method doesn't say don't grieve, it says don't go back. It emphasizes building a support ecosystem. Therapists, trusted friends, specifically to hold you steady so you can grieve without relapsing. The roadmap isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about structure. When you're drowning, you don't need empathy, you need a raft. This plan is the raft.
It's a very sturdy raft, I'll give you that. But let's look at where we land when we get to shore. The concept of the unstoppable you. This is where we get into so-called radical self-care.
And this is where the transformation really happens. And this isn't about bubble baths or buying yourself flowers. The methodology reclaims the term self-care to mean boundary maintenance and continuous self-reflection. It frames self-care as a non-negotiable discipline.
Discipline is right. I was looking at the personal growth compass and the daily weekly check-ins. It suggests we need to be constantly auditing our boundary communication and trigger management.
Correct. Because if you aren't measuring it, you aren't managing it.
But is this sustainable? I'm looking at this list. Mind nourishment, body rejuvenation, spirit connection, daily journaling, weekly emotional check-ins, identifying triggers and then scripting responses to them. It sounds like a full-time job. If I have to do all of this just to maintain my unshakable self-worth, am I actually unshakable, or am I just incredibly busy managing my own fragility?
You're managing your resilience, not your fragility. The alternative, as the philosophy points out, is self-betrayal. That is a core concept here. When you ignore your intuition, when you shrink your needs to fit someone else, you are betraying yourself. And that is a much heavier burden than a daily journal entry. Is it? Or is there a middle ground where I can trust myself without needing a spreadsheet? The spreadsheet, or the personal growth compass, whatever, it's training wheels for your intuition. The argument is that after a betrayal, your intuition is damaged. You don't know which end is up. You need the external validation of the reality check and the boundary assessment until your internal compass is recalibrated. It's not about doing this forever. It's about doing it until you are safe.
But the goal is to become unstoppable. And the definition of this is having an internal locus of control. I like that concept, knowing you're the source of your own validation.
But it also encourages a red flag versus green flag assessment for every single new interaction.
Which is necessary.
Is it though? If I meet a new friend and they gossip once, the table in there suggests that's a red flag for respect. The lesson learned is limit sharing deep personal struggles. It feels like we are creating a society of people who are essentially armed guards of their own hearts. Halt, state your business, display your green flags. Where is the vulnerability? Where's the risk?
The risk is still there, but it's calculated. The distinction is between being unguarded and empowered. An unguarded person trusts everyone until they get stabbed. An empowered person trusts people who earn it. The vetting process, checking for consistency, respect, responsibility, is how you ensure that when you do open up, you are doing it with someone who can actually hold it.
Vetting is for employees.
Vetting is for anyone you give access to your soul. Why are we so protective of our PIN codes but so careless with our emotional well-being? The question posed here is poignant. Are you ready to truly choose yourself? And that requires the courage to say no to the illusion of potential and yes to the reality of action.
I think that's the strongest point the material makes. That distinction between potential and reality. We fall in love with potential, we get hurt by reality. But I worry that this methodology swings the pendulum too far. If we eliminate all potential and only look at proven metrics, we might miss out on people who are growing just like we are. We might miss out on the grace of being human and messy together.
But at what cost? The argument is that the cost of that messy grace is often years of our lives lost to trauma bonds.
And I argue that the cost of unstoppable self-worth might be a life of pristine isolation.
Okay, let's bring this to a close because I think we've really identified the core tension here. This material, The Unfolding Heart, it's offering a pivot. It's asking us to move from a passive state, waiting for the one, hoping love conquers all, to an active, informed participation in our own lives.
I can agree with that. The call to agency is powerful. The idea that we are the architects of our own love story, that is empowering. And I will concede that for someone who's in the deep trenches of a toxic relationship, the disengagement roadmap and the idea of cognitive restructuring are likely lifesavers. They provide a ladder out of the hole.
Exactly. It prioritizes safety and sanity. It gives you a vocabulary, gaslighting, attachment style, sunk cost, to name the demons so you can fight them. It argues that self-worth must be an internal fortress, completely independent of external validation. And yes, it requires work. It requires radical self-care and constant vigilance. But the payoff is a life where you are never again a victim of your own hope.
And my final thought is this. Use the ladder to get out of the hole. Build the fortress to catch your breath. But don't live in the fortress forever. The red flag assessments and the boundary protocols, they're tools, not a lifestyle. If you treat every interaction as a potential betrayal to be vetted, you are safe, yes. You are unstoppable, sure. But you might also be unreachable, and the goal of love ultimately is to be reached.
We agree that love is not a fixed state but a dynamic landscape. Whether you traverse that landscape in a tank or on foot, well, that is the choice.
A tank is safer.
But walking lets you feel the grass.
And we leave the listener with that core question. Is it better to be empowered and perhaps a bit lonely in your fortress of self-worth? Or is the risk of betrayal simply the price of admission for a deep connection?
In The Unfolding Heart is certainly a manual for those who are ready to stop the bleeding. Whether you follow its rules to the letter or just use them as a guide, the message is clear. You are worthy.
And that is a debate worth having. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time on The Debate.